before I start, I should emphasize that Roland will be the most vociferous people to say that the TR1000 isn't a replacement or a replica of the TR909. It's got TR909 style analog circuits in there. It's got the 808 style analog circuits in there, but it's not intended to be a direct replacement. So matching tones and things like that, I'm not expecting to be able to get them perfect, especially considering the 909 is 40 years old. Each 909 is slightly different, and those tolerances on all those parts were slightly different originally, and they've all degraded now for the past 40 years. So I doubt you're going to get two 909s that are identical, never mind a brand new bit of kit and a 909. So it's more about the character and playing around with that character and how to make anything sound a bit more 909-ish, actually, even your samples. So later on in this, I'm taking a look at the main outputs and the difference the main outputs make to the individual outputs, and the TR909 being a lot less hi-fi. It's band limited. It does strange things to the frequencies. I've mentioned that in another video, but in this video, I take a deeper look at that, and I actually come up with the EQ curve that you can put on any of your 909 samplers or 909 samples in your DAW, and it should give it that much more sort of bright, present 909 style excitement. I'll just quickly run through each of the tones then. And you know, first listen, everything sounds really quite close. If we come over to the rim though, there is a difference there, and I don't know why there's such a big difference on that. We can tune it, so got a decay on there as well. Okay. So it's not quite the same. It's a bit brighter, a bit more sort of hi-fi, isn't it? Clap. We do have a couple of things we can adjust on the clap as well. Got the clap size and the tail level. But we can't tune this one. So again, slightly different. So these two don't sound exactly the same as my 909, but they do have that 909 feel. Okay, and then the hats and the cymbals, these are samples obviously, aren't they? So you'd expect these to be bang on. And they are. Ride cymbal. Obviously the analog circuitry in the 909 does adjust tuning of things and stuff, but you can play around with stuff inside here, and I'll show that in a second. Crash cymbal is knackered on the 909. It needs a bit of attention, that. So, but on each of these, we've got parameters obviously on the 909 itself, and we can adjust the same parameters on the TR1000. So the ride tune, for example. Come on here. Where's the tune? And you can adjust the maximum and minimum that these knobs will affect. So if we go to the knob assign, for example, tune, we can change the amount of tuning to keep it within the parameters of whatever 909 you've got. And in here, there are 3 programs for different 909s with different parameters or different limitations or limits on each of these parameters as well. So you can tune stuff and get it close enough to the 909, but the reason I stopped trying to do it was because it doesn't sound like my 909 identically anyway, so it was a bit of a waste of time for me. And there's 3 sort of OG models in here, and they're good enough. And it was getting a little bit obsessed, and I'll show you why. So let's go into the kick drum. So the kick drum itself, we've got a fundamental tuning frequency. If I go into, where are we, Jen? Got the fundamental frequency to this pitch here. So you're going to tune that to match the 909. And then the tune itself is the pitch decay, the pitch envelope. And you can see maximum minimum aren't going to the maximum minimum there. And that's because on this model, on this kit, it's been set to try and match this. I think, is this one I did? Yeah, near enough. So go to the knob assign, and I can put the maximum at less. Hopefully you can sort of hear what's happening there. But on the 909 itself, as I increase the pitch decay, it also slightly changes the pitch. The fundamental pitch down there is changing. I've taken a look on frequency analysis, and there is a slight difference there. Come here, add the decay. And again, with the decay, it's only set at these limitations here, so it could make it a lot longer. So you can go outside your own 909 or standard 909s. So this is me trying to keep it within these parameters. But overall, I think you'd say they both sound like 909 kick drums. Snares is a similar thing. If we take the snappy off, listen to the tuning. Do the same on this, snappy off. The tuning's slightly different there, maybe just bring that maximum down a bit. But add the snappy. Again, sounds like a 909, doesn't it? So finally, let's look at these toms, because these are the biggest difference. Obviously, we've only got a low tom and a high tom on this. We've only got the low tom and high tom analog circuits, but we do have a mid tom in here in the ACB. On the 909, we do have the low, mid and high. And it's a bit of a shame to me that they haven't used the mid, because I use the mid a lot more than the high. So it sounds to me, I mean, there were 4 revisions of the 909. This is the latest revision, so it's got the brightest sounding tom, I think. On this, yeah, it's pretty close, that, isn't it? It depends how I'm listening to it, to be honest. But what I have noticed on this is that it's almost like a flam at the start. There's 2 attack phrases, like a drum, drum. Whereas on this, there's only 1. And it does make a difference to me, that. So like a type of tone isn't quite as crisp and clean as it is on the 909. And then obviously, because this is a high tom, it doesn't come as low as the mid tom will. So we can add a mid tom to this using the ACB. So let's do that. Folder, we'll go to the ACB. The ACB models are great. And actually they're quite good for showing you how complex the tom is, really. And we'll go to the mid tom, enter. So now we're using the ACB model for the mid tom on the high tom channel. You can put whatever you want on any channel. So still not quite the same. But if I play something with a kick on it, for example, let's try this. Do the same on this one. Close enough, that, isn't it? But yeah, it's a bit weird that, or a bit ironic that it's the ACB that I'm using rather than the analog voices, because, you know, it's renowned for the analog voices, isn't it? If we take a look at the screen, there's a fair few parameters we can play with in here. So we've got the coarse tuning. This is the mid tom. And this is the ACB model, by the way, just to show you more things that you can play with. Fine tuning. And we've got a detune. And that's the detune. It sounds like it's like a pitch envelope. And we've got the oscillator mixer. There's 2 oscillators in there. So mixing them and detuning them, and if the detune between them is not the same, it really does get difficult, which I sort of obsessed over trying to get them the same, and I realised it was never going to happen. They were never going to be identical, and then I realised it didn't really matter anyway, because the character's there, and as soon as you put it in a mix, it sounds, and as soon as you put them on a beat even, it sounds right. So coming over to the next page, we've got the colour, just like the transient at the start, length of that, and the colour tone. It's like a filter on it. So that you can really get in and play around with that. So trying to make it sound like mine. Is that like it? Oops. I've got to retune it now, haven't I? But you can see how you can get completely obsessed trying to get them absolutely spot on. Anyway, I could do with a little bit more time to get that a little bit brighter, but yeah. I'm not tuning that right, but hopefully you can see what I'm trying to drive at. But yeah, with all these parameters, it does get quite complex. And if we look at just quickly again, let's go to the low tom, because this is the analog model. There's a lot less to play with, just the tune, the colour and the decay. So the tune being the main overall tuning of it. Colour is like that noise at the start, and then the decay. So yeah, a real shame for me that they didn't do this for the mid-tom, as I say, because that's the one I would use more often. And I seem to have detuned everything. Retune that high, that ride them in. Yeah, so it is super close, but the big difference really on the overall feel of it is when you come out of the individual outputs, which is why I've got the separate outputs here so that we can hear it as in a much more hi-fi version like it is on the TR1000. But yeah, I've demoed this before. I will now go into a little bit more detail on these main outputs and how it changes the overall tone. I have looked at this in a previous video, but here I go into a little bit more detail. But the main outs, as I say, are band limited compared to the individual outs. So if we just play these here, so this is 5 tracks recorded using the individual outputs. And then if I play this, we have the same pattern, but recorded via the main outs. And you can definitely hear there that it's band limited in comparison. If we just bring up this EQ again and we take a look at the lower frequencies, we're sitting there well under 5 dB under 0, aren't we? And if we play these instead, we're well above it, but you can also hear there's some differences in the presence. There's something happening up there and it pulls out a few more of the frequencies around here, and you can hear that happening. So I did decide to check that out. So here we have, let's open this, the match EQ from Logic. In match EQ you can put the current, so that was the individual outs. You can see you've got a fair amount of bass. Go to the reference, we've got less bass, but we've got more happening up there. It's exactly what you can hear. So the main fundamental frequency is almost the same there. Trying to get it as much as I can, is about 1 dB out, but essentially there's a tilt going on, isn't there? So putting those together, we get this, and this is the difference in the EQ. So the idea I'm thinking is that if we put this EQ curve over something from the main outs of something like the TR1000 or any TR909 samples for that matter, you should get much more of the sort of crusty, crunchy, lo-fi vibe that you can get from the main outs of the 909. So main out followed by the individual with the match EQ on it. Keep an eye down here. Without it, this pops up and these frequencies down here drop, don't they? So on this final channel down here, I've attempted to recreate that match EQ using a standard 5-band parametric equalizer in Logic. So if we look at these frequencies and the like here, you could potentially copy this to get that 909 band limited, weird, high presence, exciting vibe. And this does look like it's a lot more dramatic, but the scales are just different. If you look down here, that's between -15 and 10, and there over here is between -15 and 10. So using these settings, should be able to get similar to that main out. So there you go. When people said it didn't sound anything like the TR909 on the Jeff Mills demo I made, and they were right up to a point. It's much more hi-fi than the 909 unless you do that thing with the individual outputs. I'll stick the files up on my Patreon actually, so the main out and the individual out, so that if you've got something that you can do the same reference matching on Logic, you can do that with whatever software you've got, and I'll load up the Logic EQs as well, if that's of interest to you. But I thought, yeah, a bit geeky. Was a bit of fun, but I did give up on trying to recreate my 999 on the TR1000. It doesn't take anything away from the TR1000 from me. I suppose I've got a 909 anyway, but yeah, it would be nice to be able to sell the 909 to fund the 1000. And I think it's close enough to do that. My only thing that really niggled me was trying to get those toms bang on, but it's okay with the ACB, which does seem a little bit ironic. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. I hope that was of some use to somebody. Some, if it was, please do subscribe, ring the bell. Join me over on Patreon. I've got patches, I've got samples, tutorials and things like this to download of interest. And also do take a look at my starskycard.com website as well. Patches, samples, stuff for free, stuff you can pay for. And as I always say, it's nice if you pick up even some of the cheaper bits, because it all does help to support the channel. Anyway, thanks for staying to the very end. Hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you next time.